Hi everybody, Levi here, and I'm back again for my second Rage Time video in 2 days. This one's slightly different though. It's actually more in response to the first video that I did, the one yesterday, where I was talking about the minor 7 sharp 5 chord and why you probably shouldn't call it that. Because of course we're talking about the concept of music, and music is about sounds. And when we are players of music, or students of music if you like, the most important thing is that we're listening to things and we're making associations with the things that we hear and understanding them from a sound perspective, rather than what guitarists tend to do, which is more of a shape-based perspective, or certainly can be a shape-based perspective. So that video inspired a lot of discussion, both on YouTube and on my Facebook page, which was a lot of fun. And in having a conversation with a couple of guys, I was reminded of the worst music lesson, the worst theory lesson, the worst piece of misinformation, or the stupidest thing that I was ever taught. So we'll get to that, but don't worry, we'll absolutely get to that. But I need to preface it. I need to give you an idea of ear training and how you go about learning and understanding sounds and practicing for hearing intervals and things like that. So as with the lesson yesterday, I will be playing the keyboard today. Obviously you can't see it, but if I come down here and I play like a C minor chord, when I play this, I think you hear that as being a C minor chord, right? Our ears are relatively good at hearing chords. Hopefully they're good at hearing chords. As musicians, we should be able to hear this chord and have a good understanding of what that is. Maybe not in great detail, but we can certainly, well, hopefully distinguish between that and a C major chord, just in terms of chord quality. So when you're looking at oral and transcribing classes or music theory classes, when you are learning a scale, you are very often taught everything in relation to the major scale. And I think that's a good way of doing things. If I play a C major scale, I think you hear all of those notes, especially if I put a C chord underneath. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. We hear that and it makes sense. If you spend enough time practicing and hearing that, so you can do that in absolutely any key, because we're good at hearing relative pitches, when it comes to learning things like modes, things become quite easy. Because if I play that scale again, I'm going to play it very slowly for you, and I'm going to change one of the notes, okay? So what you're looking for when I do this is you're looking for, I guess, something not meeting up to what the note that you're anticipating is. So what you really want to do when I do this is kind of in your head, sing the next note before I get to actually playing it, okay? So it's going to sound like this. Now, when I did that, hopefully what you appreciated, or hopefully what you heard, is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This note's lower than you're expecting it to be. That's the flat 7 going back to the 1. Now, we talked about chords and things like that yesterday. I could play, what shall I do? If I play this chord for you, that's a good representation of what that scale sounds like. It's a dominant 7 sound. Okay, perfectly acceptable. So you see how we're doing that. When we hear the scale, we hear the alteration in relation to the regular scale. So another example, I'll do it again. I'll play the scale nice and slowly for you. And we're listening for what note is different, where it falls in relation to your expectation of where that note should be. So if I play this, hopefully when I did that, you could hear that the 4th note of the scale wasn't where you expected it to be. We didn't have ba, 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 ba. We had ba, 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 ba. It's a raised 4th. So that was a major scale with a sharpened 4th. That's the Lydian mode. And of course, you can combine these. You can use multiple intervals. We could do both of those. We could have the sharp 4 and the flat 7. And as you get better at the ear training side of things, you get better at picking those sounds up as you're listening to things. Now, this is going to work and apply to absolutely any mode, any sound, any scale. If I just do the same thing for minor, just to give you an example of that, if here's a C chord, C bass note, and over the top of that, if I play a C minor scale, that's our minor scale. If I wanted to play harmonic minor, it's that, but with a raised seventh. Awesome. These are great ways of training in the sounds of these scales. So context, that's not a word. Context is always very, very important. So the reason when I did the minor 7 sharp 5 rage video that riles me up is because 99% of the time when you hear that chord, you're not really hearing a minor chord, you're hearing a major chord. And the context that you're in will kind of help to dictate what the actual chord you're listening for actually is. So just as a kind of a preface to this rage, you'll hear some people teach the melodic minor scale. Now, the melodic minor scale is, if you want to be very classical about it, you'd say it's a natural minor scale with a raised sixth and a raised seventh. That's classical theory. If you're a more jazz-orientated person, I think that the better way of thinking of it would be it's a Dorian mode, but with a raised seventh. And the reason for that is context. I will play the melodic minor scale literally anywhere where the Dorian scale would fit. So the context, the Dorian scale, and then the melodic minor scale, those two things share context. I'll use them in the same place. So thinking of the melodic minor scale as being related or kind of an offshoot of the Dorian scale makes the most sense. What you will see some teachers do is they will try and teach you the melodic minor scale as the major scale with a flattened third. Now, you should listen to that, you should hear that and immediately go, what are you talking about? I understand how shape-wise that's going to help me get to the end result faster, but it's not teaching me the wider context, because saying a major scale with a flattened third, well, the defining major characteristic of a scale is the fucking third. You can't just flatten the third and then still think of it as being major. You fundamentally changed the perspective that you have on the scale. So let's get to the actual fucking rage. So this one blows my damn mind. And I'll tell you why it blows my damn mind, actually. You can tell I'm getting a little bit more riled up now. So I went to music school. I went and did a degree in music performance. And I spent a lot of money doing that. I put myself in a lot of debt in order to do that because I wanted to take my education extremely seriously. But what I found when I went to London and went to music school is there were lots of people that were at music school not because they wanted to take music seriously, but because they didn't really want to go out and do, hard work. And they had rich parents, so the rich parents could just send them off to music school and pay. I think it was over £3,000 a year back then. I think it's gone up to about £9,000 a year now. So absolutely astonishing the quality of some of the people. Don't get me wrong, there were some really serious musicians that I met at music school. But there were a lot of people that really had no damn business being there. And after a few years of being there, you realise actually it wasn't an incredible opportunity that I was given to come to a school like this. It wasn't a sign and a pat on the back of how hard I've worked to get here. Because they'll essentially let anyone in if the person has the money, which you can tell riles me up. And I think that's what this comes down to, right? This happened to me. I forget. I'm pretty sure it was oral and transcribing class, a class that they tried to fail me in, despite the fact I was using transcribing to pay my fucking rent. So oral and transcribing class. Now, in a class like that, they're teaching people of all instrumental backgrounds. Okay, guitar players, bass players, drummers, piano players, and singers. And what you tend to find with singers in music school like that is some of them are wonderful musicians, but a huge portion of them don't play any musical instrument whatsoever. They don't play any piano. They can't play the guitar. They don't really have a deep understanding of harmony or chords. But it's a music school, right? And music schools aren't successful unless they are handing out grades that people want. Okay, if you're a high standard music school that's just going to fail people that don't meet your standard, well, people are going to be less inclined to want to go to your school. Actually, there's a Branford Marsalis video on this, which I do want to do a video on. Let me just post that clip in here to give you an idea of it's not just me that thinks this. So obviously, none of the singers wanted to fail, and you're not going to go to music school if you think the school's going to fail you. So it's in the school's interest to have a curriculum in place that caters to those people that are likely to fail. And this is where we come on to the most offensive thing that I have ever been taught. And to make it worse, I was paying thousands of pounds a year in order to get a qualification from this institution so I could be taken seriously as a music educator. And I stood there in class and was told that the seventh mode of the harmonic minor scale is Mixolydian with a sharp 1. Just let that process just for a second. A scale with a sharp 1. This was in oral and transcribing class as well, I might add. Oral and transcribing class. And, you're thinking of the method that I've just demonstrated for all of this stuff. When we play any of our scales, I play my C and I play the first 3 notes of a major scale. I'm hearing everything in relation to that first note. Ba, ba, ba. If I wanted to hear Lydian, ba, 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 ba. If I want to hear minor, ba, ba, ba. I'm hearing everything in relation to that first sound, okay? And when we listen to any scale, any linear section of notes, you are comparing it to that first note, okay? That's how that works, of course. So imagine being sat in an exam. Imagine being sat in an exam, okay? And you're testing all your scales, you're listening to all your scales, and then suddenly you get played this scale. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, so it plays again. You go, okay, here's my first note. You go, okay, well, the first interval is a flat 2. Oh, okay, the next interval is a flat 3. Okay, well, I guess that must be a diminished fourth. You follow this process until you work out the scale, you work out the intervals, and then you get told you're wrong because the teacher turns around and says to you, Levi, didn't you notice the sharp 1? Absolutely mind-numbingly ridiculous, and I cannot believe that there is a curriculum out there that is charging people money to teach this absolute horseshite. Beyond offensive, beyond, like, I can't think of anything that has melted my mind as much as that situation that happened to me. And I had to sit there and smile and go, man, I'm getting £27,000 in debt for this. This is worth every motherfucking penny. So yeah, I think the most important thing when I'm talking about something like this is that I'm not just presenting these ideas to you and saying these are stupid, take my word for it, okay? It's the same with Mixolydian Sharp 1. I was being presented it with a take my word for it approach. There was no rationale applied to it. Everything that I've talked to you about today, I hope that I have demonstrated and I've made a case for why these things are the way they are, the reason that we end up where we are because of the path of thinking that has allowed us to reach that place. Whereas taking something and just saying, this is how it is, that's just the fact, learn that. You don't need to worry about anything that came before it, or how we got to this piece of information. That is, I think, fundamentally the worst possible way that you can teach any sort of music education, because your students, it's so important that your students know how to arrive at the conclusions, not just the conclusions themselves. I hated in maths class when I was younger, always being told I need to put my working out on the tests. I need to show the teacher how I've arrived at my conclusion. And that annoyed me because I was very good at maths when I was younger. I would look at equations or whatever the problem was, and I don't want to say instinctively, but it was obvious to me. I'd look at things and the answer was very obvious to me. And it always annoyed me that I would be marked down because I didn't show my working. But actually, being older now and understanding why, from an educational perspective, that it's important that we understand how we arrive at information makes my blood boil. Thinking that I got £27,000 in debt because of music school so I could learn absolute bloody nonsense. like Mixolydian, sharp 1. And there we have it, guys. That's the end of this rage time video. I hope that didn't instill as much rage in you as it did in me, because this is like a deeply personal thing that has happened to me. There's still deeply held trauma over this situation. So I hope you don't have the same level of sadness when you hear this story. But I imagine that you've probably had similar examples of just bad education being put your way. So if you have any stories like that to share, please do post them in that comments section below. Lastly, I just want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters, or some of my Patreon supporters. You guys keep these videos coming. You know, I made a video yesterday, making a video today, going to do a stream tonight, got some videos planned for the rest of the week. It's amazing that I can take so much time out of all the transcribing work that I have to do in order to make videos to entertain and inform, educate, and, you know, create discussion with the internet and with the world. And you guys help that to happen. So thank you very much. Your support is appreciated. There we go. Words are in there somewhere. And finally, you know, if you don't want to check me out on Patreon, you can check out one of my books on Amazon. Just search for Levi Clay. Lots of books. You won't find any ridiculous shite in there like Mixolydian Sharp 1. Don't you worry about that. If you would like to check me out on Patreon, you can do so by clicking this button up here. You can subscribe by clicking this button down here. And you'll see 2 more of my videos here and here. Thank you so much for all of the support, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you for another video soon. Goodbye.